Most people check their phone within the first 5 minutes of waking up. Some studies estimate it's closer to 90% of adults. It feels harmless. You're just seeing what happened while you slept. But here's what almost nobody talks about. For a lot of people, blood pressure that spikes the moment they wake up doesn't come back down until close to noon. Not because of anything dramatic, because of a handful of ordinary morning habits stacking on top of each other, quietly, before you've even had breakfast. Research on circadian blood pressure patterns has a name for this, the morning surge, and it's one of the most overlooked windows in everyday cardiovascular health. Stick around, because the habit most responsible for stretching that surge out for hours isn't the one you'd guess. This isn't a drink more water kind of issue. Morning blood pressure elevation is slow, cumulative, and easy to dismiss. A little grogginess here, a little tension there, until it's a pattern your body runs every single day for years. A few things drive it. How fragmented your last stretch of sleep was, how much sodium is still sitting in your system from the night before, whether your blood vessels get any signal to wake up through movement, and how your stress hormones respond to the first thing you look at. Cardiology researchers have flagged morning surge hypertension specifically because it disproportionately affects people who otherwise look healthy on paper. Busy, well-intentioned people who sleep a reasonable number of hours and don't think of themselves as high risk at all. Before we get into it, I'm Dr. Mark Carter. What I am is someone who got curious about this topic after noticing my own blood pressure readings didn't calm down until well after lunch, and went down the research rabbit hole to figure out why. Everything here comes from publicly available research on sleep, cardiovascular physiology, and stress response. The kind of information that exists, but rarely gets translated into anything usable. I'm not selling a supplement or a monitoring device at the end of this. I just think this is genuinely useful information that most people never encounter unless they go looking for it themselves. Don't skip this next part. It's the foundation for everything that follows. There are two mechanisms you need in your head, and I'll keep coming back to both of them. The first is the cortisol awakening response. Basically, your body naturally releases a burst of the stress hormone cortisol in the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking, which is normal and helps get you moving. The problem isn't that this happens, it's what extends it. The second is sympathetic nervous system activation, your body's alert and ready mode, the one that raises heart rate and tightens blood vessels. Under normal conditions, that spike is supposed to taper off within an hour or so. What keeps it elevated is repeated triggering, waking your body up, then interrupting it, then triggering the alert response again before it's finished settling. Keep those two things in mind, the cortisol spike and the sympathetic trigger. Almost everything in this video comes back to one or both. Let's start with something that feels like self-care, hitting snooze. On paper, a few extra minutes of sleep sounds like a kindness to your body. But here's the twist. In that final stretch before you actually get up, your body is already beginning its natural wake-up process, gradually raising heart rate and blood pressure to prepare you to move. When you hit snooze and drift back into light sleep, then get jolted awake again 9 minutes later, you're not extending rest. You're interrupting a process that was already underway and restarting the sympathetic trigger from scratch, sometimes 2 or 3 times in a row. Research on sleep fragmentation and cardiovascular measures has consistently linked this kind of repeated disruption to a larger, longer-lasting morning surge compared to waking cleanly at a consistent time. The consequence is straightforward. Your heart rate and blood pressure spend longer in that elevated alert state before they're able to settle, because they never got a clean, complete wake-up signal. What to do instead? Keep it simple. Set one alarm, not a string of snooze cycles. Put your phone or alarm across the room so you have to physically get up to turn it off. Try to wake at a consistent time, even on weekends, since a stable rhythm reduces how shocked the system is each morning. And when you do get up, get some natural light on your face within the first few minutes. It helps signal to your body that the wake-up process is complete. Next, what you eat at dinner the night before. A salty meal at the end of a long day feels earned. Comfort food, nothing wrong with that. But sodium doesn't clear your system overnight the way most people assume. Your kidneys process sodium more slowly while you sleep, so a salt-heavy dinner is often still influencing your blood volume when you wake up. That matters because more sodium in your bloodstream means your body retains more fluid, and more fluid means more pressure pushing against your artery walls, a direct physical increase in blood pressure that has nothing to do with stress hormones at all, just volume and pressure. General cardiology research on sodium intake and blood pressure consistently shows this effect is strongest in people who are salt sensitive, which is a larger group than most people realize. It's not just something that affects people with diagnosed hypertension. The consequence is a systolic number that stays elevated well into the morning, compounding whatever the cortisol and sympathetic responses are already doing. What to do instead? Try shifting your heaviest, saltiest meal earlier in the day rather than right before bed. Add potassium-rich foods like leafy greens, bananas, or beans, since potassium helps your body balance out sodium's effect. Use herbs and acid, lemon, vinegar, garlic, instead of salt to season a late dinner. And watch for hidden sodium in sauces, canned goods, and takeout, which is often where the real damage happens without you noticing. Here's what I find genuinely surprising about the next two. They're the ones people are most likely to be doing every single day without a second thought, and they're also the most misunderstood. So stick with me, because item 3 is the one most people get completely backwards. Also, if you've made it this far, consider subscribing. I post videos like this regularly, always working from the same approach. Real research, explained plainly, no supplement pitch at the end. Third, skipping movement in the first hour. This one gets misread as a productivity habit. Sit down, have your coffee, ease into the day slowly, save your energy for later. It feels responsible. But your blood vessels don't just wake up on their own. They rely on physical movement to trigger something called endothelial function, where movement prompts your blood vessel walls to release nitric oxide, a compound that helps vessels relax and widen. Without that signal, your vessels stay in a tighter, more constricted resting state for longer, which keeps pressure elevated even after the initial cortisol spike has technically passed. This is part of why some people can do everything right with sleep and still see blood pressure stay high. They're sitting still for 2 or 3 hours before the first real movement of the day. What to do instead? You don't need a workout. A 5 to 10 minute walk, some light stretching, or even standing and moving around while your coffee brews is often enough to trigger that vascular relaxation response. Take the stairs instead of the elevator if you can. The goal isn't intensity, it's just getting the signal sent early. And fourth, the one tied to the title. Because in most cases, this is the habit doing the most damage, mainly because it compounds everything else. Checking your phone first thing feels productive. You're catching up, staying ahead, seeing what you missed. But remember that cortisol awakening response from earlier? It's already elevated in that first half hour, and it's designed to taper off naturally. The problem is what most people look at during that exact window. Work messages, group chats, breaking news, notifications demanding a reaction. Feeding stress-inducing content directly into a system that's already running high on cortisol re-triggers the sympathetic nervous system before the first wave has even finished settling. General research on stress hormones and cardiovascular reactivity shows this kind of repeated stimulation, even from something as small as a stressful email, can meaningfully extend how long blood pressure stays elevated. On its own, this habit is a problem. Stacked on top of fragmented sleep, sodium retention, and a sedentary start, it's often the final piece that pushes the surge from an hour or two to still not settled by noon. What to do instead? Give yourself 15 to 30 minutes device-free before checking anything. If you do need to check your phone early, Do it after some light or movement, not as the very first thing. And when you do look, try to filter. Check something low stakes first, not your inbox or the news. When I first put all four of these together, my reaction wasn't alarm. It was frustration, honestly, because none of it is complicated information. It's just never presented together. I think about a parent who wakes up already reaching for their phone because a kid needs something, sits down with coffee because there's no time for anything else, and doesn't realize the accumulation. I think about a student who's snoozing through 3 alarms after a late night of studying, salt from cafeteria foods still working through their system. I think about someone at a desk job who's up and working within 10 minutes of waking, but hasn't actually moved. None of these are extreme behaviors. They're just normal mornings. The goal here was never to scare anyone. It's to close the gap between information that exists and information that actually reaches people. So here's the short version. Repeated snoozing interrupts your body's natural wake-up process and re-triggers the sympathetic nervous system multiple times before it can settle, extending the surge. A salty dinner the night before increases blood volume through fluid retention, adding direct physical pressure that's often still present hours later. Skipping movement in the first hour keeps your blood vessels in a tighter resting state because they rely on physical activity to trigger the relaxation response. And checking your phone, especially anything stressful, first thing in the morning, re-stimulates an already elevated cortisol response before it has a chance to taper naturally. Different causes, same shared thread. Each one either re-triggers or extends the 2 mechanisms we started with, the cortisol spike and the sympathetic alert response. If you want the practical version, 1. Set a single alarm across the room and get up the first time. 2. Shift your saltiest meal earlier in the day. 3. Get some form of movement, even 5 minutes, before you sit down for the day. 4. Delay your phone for the first 15 to 30 minutes. If you only change one thing, make it that last one. Delaying phone and notification exposure for even a short window, paired with a few minutes of natural light, tends to have the most noticeable effect because it directly interrupts the mechanism that's compounding everything else. So, out of those 4, which one surprised you the most? For a lot of people, it's the snooze button, since it seems like the opposite of harmful. Let me know in the comments, and if there's a related topic you'd want covered next, I'm always looking for what to dig into. Before you go, think of one specific person in your life this might apply to. Maybe it's a parent who reaches for their phone before their feet hit the floor, or a friend who's always so tired no matter how much they sleep. Sending them this isn't about pointing anything out. It's just passing along something useful that most people never come across on their own. That's really the only goal here. Last thing, everything in this video is educational, not personal medical advice. Research in this area continues to evolve, and individual factors like medication, existing health conditions, and genetics matter more than any general video can account for. If anything here resonated, the best next step is bringing it up with a doctor who actually knows your history. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.